Okay. Just a reminder what we talked about last week, and I only bring this up because some of your architectures were a bit sparse. It was like one diagram. Here's what we talked about last week. I said your architecture should include conditions of customer delight, the what, your top-level design, which measures subsystems interactions, how to document your explicit choices and trade-offs in your technology and feature set, and why. In other words, why this stuff is all going to work together to achieve customer delight. I also talked about having an overall view of system architecture, fill in details to allow implementation, and identify the hard problems up front and prioritize them. I think hardly anyone identified hard problems up front. Some of you did, certainly sort of buried it, but in a lot of cases it just wasn't there. So I was underwhelmed by the set of architecture documents that I reviewed. And a lot of you are going to get, it's worth 3 points, which is, say, 3% of your grade. That's for everyone on the team. A lot of you are going to get 1s and 2s. But if you expand and revise your architecture and come back and say, hey, can you reconsider, you can get full credit. Why is someone from Maryland calling me? Go away. So, just with that, let me go to the wiki and let's look at some of these. Go to the wiki here. Now, as I recall, this was actually how many times I put through here. This is a document that actually followed what I said in class. I was very pleased with this one. The conditions of customer to select the what. So you've got your architecture here, you've got your interfaces, you've got a how talking about the technologies and the choices and trade-offs for the technologies. That's a big architectural issue. Why this particular approach and some of the trade-offs is described. This is one I looked, saw this one and said, yes, this is what I'm looking for. So I was very happy with this one. I was less happy with some of the other ones. But hey, live and learn, stuff is iterative, yada, yada, yada. Okay, design architecture document. This one was a bit briefer, but still tended to follow something of the same thing. Gave some description of the trade-offs and the issues here. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's our overall goal. Now, let me just note that in the future, having a section on document purpose that comprises about 25% of the entire document means you either need less detail here or more detail in the rest of the document. If it takes you this long to describe the document purpose and it's followed by a single diagram and a sentence down here, you spent too much time on it. But did have a diagram here. I was going to have you guys stand up and talk about this, but I'll just step through this. Okay. This is one where we apparently just had a single diagram. Oops, sorry, just went away. So this is, I would say, necessary but not sufficient. This is actually a very good diagram for the project architecture. You didn't address the technology trade-offs and decisions, didn't address what the hard problems were, didn't address why this actually satisfies your target customer and achieves what you want to do. Architecture, and this is actually a good point for me to make. There is a common problem in the real world where chief architects become very enamored of their architecture without consideration as to whether or not it actually meets the market needs of the product. It's like, I have this cool architecture and we can do this. I'm thinking of a project that I will give no details in the off chance that some of the people involved actually see this video someday. Anyway, but it was an architecture that was actually a very sophisticated architecture, but it was taking forever to get done. It was basically an architecture for a system to create applications. So we're at the system programming part of the quadrant there, where it's not, this is an actual development tool with some pretty profound sophistication. And when it was finally finished, it actually worked very well, but the time being spent on it did not jive with what the customer needed as far as when it was available. It took so long to go into production and to become useful that the customer had sort of moved on to other solutions by then. The actual applications built using this technology were very solid, very stable, very successful, but it never achieved return on investment because it took too long to get something working. Design document. This is one of the better ones simply because it has some actual text. It describes what the goals are, why the architecture is the way it is, what the purpose is. I like the call-out boxes here. That's a nice merger of both diagrams and text explaining what's being done and why. Some additional classes here, trade-off exhaustive principles, risks and potential problems. Here we go. That's a good one. It's not necessarily saying these are the hard things, but usually if you're talking about risks and potential problems, it's the hard stuff. So here's someone who actually addressed that. So all of you on the low-hanging fruit mud can feel self-satisfied. Anyway, or at least happy that your chief architect read the slides and said, oh, I have to put this in here. Okay, conditions of customer delight. Very good. And actually, I like that this is accepted. And again, if no one buys your product, it's worthless. Doesn't matter how elegant or powerful it is. If no one buys it, if no one uses it, it hasn't achieved anything, except that you spend a lot of time and money putting things together. So, in architecting and designing a product, remember I said architecture is a political act. Part of that is that you've got to be able to sell this to the customer. There's got to be a wow factor there of some kind. This solves a problem. One of the standard and highly unscientific rules of thumb is if you want to displace an existing solution, your solution has to be 5 times better. If it's not, then you start to get into the fact that people just would rather stick with what they know than have to learn a new system. Now, there is an important, and I don't want to go too far off field, but this is important for those of you who want to go to commercial stuff. There's an important exception to this. If your solution is designed so that it can work in parallels with the existing solution, and the user doesn't see that as a big issue, then you can slip right in and replace it. This is what happened now, of course, recognizing things as pendulums swung back the other way. This is what happened with CDs and vinyl. Actually, CDs and everything else. I remember when the first CDs came out. I bought a Sony Discman back in 1985. Little portable Sony CD player, I think it would cost about $500. $1985. So a couple of thousand today. And at that time, Tower Records, back when there were actual record stores, which says a lot right there, had like one display of CDs. Everything else was vinyl, cassette, There were probably more 8-track tapes in there than there were CDs. But the thing about CDs is that I didn't have to give up my turntable, and I didn't have to give up my 2 full boxes of vinyl albums to start using CDs. I bought the CD player and I started buying CDs, but I still had vinyl and I still use it. In fact, I had my vinyl records until we moved from Colorado 5 years ago. Still had vinyl records going back to the 60s. And just gave them away to friends and families there. And then got a severe tongue lashing from our son Wes because I completely forgot he was living in another state. And he was in Texas. He's a DJ. It's like he gave away 2 boxes of vinyl albums. You didn't tell me. He still mutters about that. But that is how you do it. In other words, if you have to displace it, this is the problem. For example, this is why electric cars face such a big challenge. It's not that they're competing for space on the road, but they're competing for space for refueling. And there's already this vast infrastructure of gas stations, and it is hard and expensive to go in and replace or to supplement them with charging stations. And this is significantly limited the penetration. Beyond that, you know, for a lot of people, it's one car or the other. It's I have to choose an electric or a gas car, and I have considerations because of range, I have considerations because of temperature, I have considerations because of cost. You know, you can go out and Provo is the capital of cheap used cars, okay? Which is probably true of any college town. But you know, you can go out and just cruise by parking lots, like, yeah, okay, that one's $3,000. That's not bad, okay? You can get into a used car very cheaply, used gas car very cheaply. Going out and trying to buy an electric car is, even with the rapidly expiring tax credits and breaks, still an expensive proposition. So this is what often prevents what may be superior on some aspect technology from displacing inferior technology. We're a bi-coastal house. My wife uses all Macintosh stuff. I use all Windows stuff. Not big. I was covering Macintosh 35 years ago. Yeah. I used to write for Mac. I have nothing against Apple stuff, but my work requires me to interact with my customers, and I'm dealing almost entirely with Windows stuff. But Sandra can use Macintosh stuff. A lot of Windows users would actually like to go over to Apple, but what are some of the issues they run into? Hardware is more expensive, and they know how to use Windows, and they don't know how to use Macintosh. Why does this work this way? Yes?
Baby duck syndrome.
Baby duck syndrome.
It's a thing where if you get used to and trained on one thing, moving to other stuff is harder.
Yep.
Same with moving from Windows to Linux.
Oh yeah.
Or from automatic transmission to stick transmission.
Yep. Whereas moving from stick to automatic, it's not like, oh, it's a car driving itself, but I'm bored. Some of the earliest fights my wife and I had, not fights, arguments. We got married and she had a Vanagon, it was a stick. She kept saying, you're riding the clutch, you're riding the clutch. I said, so? She says, well, you'll wear it out. I said, well, we'll buy a new one. I don't care, this is how I drive. Anyway, okay, getting back to the architecture. So this is actually a very good document here. Got some front-end mock-ups, so on and so forth. But my my point before I went wandering off was that architecture depends upon pleasing the customer. Another good document. I mean, I'm still, for the purposes of this class, this is a fine architecture document. You've got text surrounding the stuff you're doing, you're talking about it, address a number of different areas. I liked the diagrams here. This was a little light on text. You really didn't talk about satisfying the customer. You can talk about hard problems. But what you did have there was good. Time budget. Okay, purpose and customer satisfaction. You've got 3 different charts here. I won't go into them, but this was a great document. You had 3 diagrams. You have front-end mock-up. Great. Output drives everything else. Ultimately, what drives everything you develop is what the customer sees or interacts with. And if you're not clear on the output, then you're not going to be clear on anything else. And difficult problems. So here was a good someone who actually said, yes, here are the difficult problems we have. And then where can I watch? Introduction, system architecture, front end, back end, UI mockups. This was a little sparse. Could probably use some expansion on it. So, you've all seen each other. You've seen what's good. Those of you, if I criticized your architecture, then now's a pretty good time today. Sometimes to expand some, fill it out. I'll give it a few days before I actually go through and grade these. And then you may want to check the grade towards the end of the week. If you don't have 3 full points, then you contact me and see what else I might want. So let's close that. And let's talk about the readings. I really need to do a better job with some of these reading assignments. Guys are being experimented on. Next semester we'll have it better because I'll have the readings, I think, a little more coherent. I thought they were coherent, but I look at them and say, now why did I lump those